Welcome to Anchor Down from the Vanderbilt campus. Zach and Jimmy are back here with our Vanderbilt Sports Podcast, Episode 2, JT and Zeke on West End. And we woke up this morning and realized it's 68 days till basketball season.
Anchor Down, let's go!
We're ranked 15 in a poll that came out yesterday or the day before.
Yeah,
we're really excited about that. However, that's not what we're here to talk to you about today. We're here to do a roundup on the Western Kentucky game, talk a little bit about Georgia, and talk about Derek Mason's job security going forward.
Yep, so I'll give my optimistic viewpoint and the more pessimistic one on the game against Western Kentucky. So, starting with the more positive look at it all, I think we looked competitive last year against Temple. You could not say that whatsoever. We were in position to win this game, and there were a lot of plays that had we just executed on those, we would have won.
I completely agree. There's definitely 4 or 5 plays you could just look at. Interceptions, drops, 2-point conversion play that really killed us.
Absolutely. And then the negative way to look at it all is we were the only SEC team to lose this week. And Western Kentucky, they're better than some of the teams that other SEC teams faced, but they're not the greatest.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that. You look, most of the scores are blowouts as well across the SEC. And I think our team definitely looked improved. There was just some clutch moments that you can't really teach. And that part of that is the youth on our team. Part of that's Johnny McCrary not having a ton of experience compared to some other guys. Like, there are those 2 picks in the end zone that are just inexcusable. The one on first down really killed us. The one on fourth down, not as much. Giving the team the ball on the 20 instead of on the goal line isn't that big of a deal. But you can't really fault the play calling there. On the first one, Shoy was wide open for a while, but McCrary was just staring down his first read as if he really didn't know what else to do. And then by the time he looked, it was just a forced pass that nobody really could have converted. Peyton Manning, Aaron Rodgers would not have been able to make that throw.
Yeah, I thought McCrary overall looked all right, I guess, maybe a little below average. There were some plays where I thought he played smart, especially when he ran the ball. But at the same time, there were a lot of plays in which it looked like he was blindfolded and just threw the ball into triple coverage.
Yeah, I agree. McCrary looked very good running the ball, which is different than our running backs in the game. Going in, we each predicted that Ralph Webb and Dallas Rivers would be the 2 key players for us, and really the offensive line could not get much of a push up front. A lot of this is due to losing 2 starters, Jelks and Delando Crooks, going into the first game, especially Jelks at left tackle. It just seems like couldn't get much of a push. Pulley and Bernstein looked good. The rest of the offensive line looked a little shaky.
Yeah, absolutely. Running has to be our strength. Webb only had 70 yards on 18 carries, averaging less than 4 yards per rush. That needs to change. And Rivers only 26 total yards on 11 rushes. The offensive line needs to create more of a push, and I know that's going to be more difficult against Georgia, but it needs to happen.
Yeah, I agree. And some of the key, bright aspects in this game for us, Trent Sherfield looked good. It looks like he's a guy we should get the ball more often. Him and Sims are 2 playmakers for us that I think we need to utilize a little differently than we did this time, even throwing more screens. We threw a lot of screens at the beginning of the game that kind of went away from that. I think good things will happen if we get the ball to Sherfield. Also on defense, there's some key aspects we could take away from that. The defense looked good. The linebackers looked solid. And the corners even, that was one of our worries going into the game, looked very, very good. Trey Bell and Trey Herndon, the 2 Treys, looked like our 2 best corners in the game, and those were 2 players who were very raw, who we're both very excited about, who looked really good.
I like everything you just said. First 3 quarters, this defense was stellar. Lockdown defense, great coverage by the corners. Fourth quarter, it seemed like we crumbled a little bit, maybe lost motivation, maybe Western Kentucky just happened to turn it on then. But overall, you've got to think the defense was, just as good, if not better than we even expected. Only 14 points for Western Kentucky, a team that averaged probably close to 35 last year. So overall, good performance by them. A couple players that stood out to me were Landon Stokes and Jonathan Wynn. Both of them were not on my radar whatsoever, and they both came in and were all over the ball every play, so they surprised me.
Yeah, Stokes was all over the field. Josh Smith also looked good in his limited work. He made a couple big plays. I remember one big play where he just shoved an offensive lineman aside on a screen pass and made the tackle on the running back. He's certainly a player and down the road who could be a star for us, and I think looking forward, you're looking at Georgia next week. Georgia might be our toughest game of the year. Nick Chubb, probably the best running back in the country, if not one of the top 2 running backs in the country. They also have some other guys that Jimmy likes on their depth chart.
Yeah, Sony Michel is an unbelievable running back, lightning speed. He actually had, I think, 70 yards receiving on top of a lot of rushing yards. And then you got to look at Keith Marshall, who's kind of been out of the picture for a couple years, but he got a lot of reps. I think averaged over 7 yards per run in the first game. So they have 3 running backs that can make a statement to be top 10 in the entire nation.
Yeah, I agree. So if you're looking at Georgia, I mean, it's hard for us to make game predictions. We hate predicting the team to lose, but I feel like there are some good things to take away from this game. I feel like another strong performance of the defense, although they probably won't hold Georgia to 14 points. If they could keep them under 30, I feel like this will be a victory for them, given our offense probably won't be able to hold the ball very often. The defense will get tired.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think our defense is our only chance of keeping us in a close game against Georgia, and it's a possibility. It's home. We have SEC Nation on campus. Hopefully the stadium will be full. I have a few concerns. One is the fact that Georgia's defense is much better than Western Kentucky. So for me, I think a reasonable goal for our offense would be to score 2 touchdowns, and hopefully the running game can be better. But looking at Georgia's defense, they have the number 1 defensive tackle recruit in the nation, ranked number 1 overall on a lot of sites, Trenton Thompson. So it's going to be hard to run against him. And they also have arguably the best linebacker corps in the entire nation.
Yeah, it's certainly going to be a tough game for us. Our run defense is probably the shakiest part of our defense right now. And I feel like there are some moral victories that you can take away. I mean, you hate saying that, an SEC team taking away moral victories from a loss, but I feel like we could look, if we score more than we did last week against a much better defense than we played last week, and hold them. I think if you hold the running back, if they rush for less than 200 yards, that might be a victory.
So yeah, under 200 would be unbelievable. I'd be so happy with that.
So although we don't think we're going to make game predictions points-wise right now, I think we're going to go ahead and talk about Derek Mason as our coach going forward. What do you think he needs to do to... I mean, right now, I'm not on the Fire Mason camp. I'm not sure if you are. Some people certainly are. Some people are opposed to it. What do you think Mason has to show this week and in the coming weeks to secure his job for the rest of this season and next season?
I hate to say it because I honestly think Mason's made some great adjustments. I think he's a pretty good coach. He knows his X's and O's, and he's really done a good job this offseason. But for me, I need to see 4 wins for him to keep his job. I know if we were to get 3, we'd obviously be an improved team just looking at the schedule. And I know we're going to look more competitive throughout the season. We looked all right in the first game. But the fact is, if you look at our recruiting, we're getting guys that are 2, 3 stars. And none of them, for the most part, even have offers from other Power 5 conferences. And that's going to continue if we don't win. So for me, I need to see at least 4 wins.
I agree. Mason isn't the best recruiter. I think that's probably his biggest negative as a coach. And winning leads to recruiting. That's pretty much as simple as you can say it. But a 5-win team, it's a lot easier to say, oh, we're 1 win away from a bowl game, than a 3-9 team looks like a complete rebuild that's just a bottom feeder in the best conference for college football. So I agree. I think getting to 4, I think if he gets 4, he keeps his job, because that means we'd win an SEC game at this point. Gets 5, he's definitely safe. Gets 3, he's on the hot seat. Gets 2, it's hard to keep him. Although rebuilding is tough, I feel like Mason is one of the best defensive minds out there. You might have to look other ways if that happens.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. It's just, for me, 2, 3 wins is unacceptable. 4 wins is... I'm even on the cusp about that, to be honest. I just don't want to see a downward spiral of the program. 4 wins might not be enough to win over recruits, and if we can't bring in good recruits, then we're going to be still competing against these SEC teams. And I just can't see these guys being as competitive as the recruits Georgia's getting and, other teams like that. We need to compete with teams like Georgia in recruiting if we want to compete with them on the field. You don't want to be recruiting against Bowling Green.
I agree. I think we got to try to hold on to Mason as long as he's not going to put us in the hole that Jimmy's talking about when it comes to recruiting. And that all comes back down to winning. I think that 4 wins, you never know. I think we will keep Mason, but a lot of people will definitely be against it.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And I think that's all we have for today, unless you have any more comments about Mason.
No, I think that's it. We'll be back here after the Georgia game, hopefully learn some more things about this team. Hopefully there'll be some positives to take away from the game, even though it might not be a victory for the squad.
Yeah, come out to Vandy Saturday for the Georgia game.
Anchor down, 2:30.
Thank you.